Welcome back to our newly titled podcast, Shades of View. This is episode 2. This is sponsored by the Blanchard Institute. So if you watched our previous podcast, episode 1, you will know where we left off. We were going over how I got here. I am Kenya Ross, and my co-host Michael True is back with us again today. It will always be he and I. We are a tag team. You get both of us. So we wanted to pick up today where we left off with episode 1. We want to give Mike a chance to discuss how he got to this point. And so I will ask him to share a little bit about himself, how he got to this point, and a little bit of backstory on him.
Yeah, perfect. So the short story of it is really I'm personally in recovery myself. Spent a good bit of my adolescent and early adult years kind of going through the hard path of drug use and some destruction that comes along with that. And so, probably for about, probably from the point of 15, 16 years old through about the time when I was about 25 years old, I was pretty much using daily, if not every other day. And things escalated to the point pretty quickly where, it started off with the casual drinking and marijuana, and it very quickly escalated to kind of the other end of the spectrum in terms of the harder stuff. So, it took a few years of me going in and out of treatment for a while to be open to the help and to actually start applying what I was learning in my real life, rather than just, going to treatment as a break. And then finally that last time when it stuck, I kind of fell into the treatment industry through an old billing job I had. And, when my wife and I moved back from California after I was doing the whole sober living deal, I was working remote for a while and didn't really fit what I was looking for that much. Especially someone who, again, is a sober guy himself. The worst thing for a guy like me is isolation and locking myself in a room. And so waking up every day and staying in my house to work is not a good idea. And so my wife actually started working here first. And I one day just kind of said, hey, if you guys are ever hiring, give my number to Ward. And long story short, he reached out and it kind of clicked pretty quickly. So now I work in so Kenya is on our clinical side. I'm more on the withdrawal management, which is our outpatient detox side of things. So a little more on the medical side, operational, kind of outreach side of things. So I see people when they, kind of first come in or those first calls. And so it's a good way to stay grounded in the reality of people's situation and what's going on in terms of substance use and mental health disorders. So, yeah, that's the short version of it.
Mike, how do you think, I'm always curious because I always try to think about my own life and what aspects I have experienced that help me to lean into clients. And, we always talk about that, making sure that we lean in and we show compassion. What aspects of your journey do you think help you when you meet with a client? We always have, so many new clients and so many people that come from so many different walks of life. What do you think from your own journey aids you in meeting with that new client and meeting with families and, helping them begin this journey, this process?
Yeah, to be blunt with it, honestly, I don't talk to them like a patient, right? And I'll even tell them sometimes, I may use some younger lingo, I would say sometimes, just because I'm talking to a lot of these people, especially the ones around my age, like they're some of my buddies, right? So I've got a lot of friends who have gotten sober and are doing well, but I've also got a lot of friends who are kind of still dealing with the old stuff that I was. And so I kind of make a point to connect with them like I would be talking to a friend or talking to a peer, rather than as a potential client or a potential patient. And I know back in the day when I was in and out for a while, I quickly gravitated towards the people who had a similar past as me in terms of the staff side. So having the ability to connect in more of just from a standpoint of knowledge, but from a standpoint of experience. I think there's really not too much from my past that I can't tap into now to use as some kind of resource or guiding light and helping somebody to see, even from a parental standpoint. Watching the things that I put my family through, and my brothers, sisters, mom, dad, whoever it is, the things that I put them through, even if I'm just talking to a parent now, I can really relate to where they're currently at, and the benefits that can come from someone getting the proper treatment. So
I have to agree with you. I think that human connection, and we talk about that a lot when we have conversations. Whenever I'm seeing you walking past with a client or a potential client or a potential family, I think it's that human connection that we have to have. I've heard so many different, times in leadership and different, blogs that I watch or posts that I watch, and we can have the alphabet behind our name, and a lot of us do have those credentials behind our name, but if we don't have that human connection and we don't lean into families and show compassion, they're not going to want to be engaged with our facility. I think it starts when we get that first phone call. I think you just, kind of hit it on the nail on the head. Treating them like a human and treating them like their family, because they are really going to be family with us. They're going to be with us for a number of weeks, a number of months as they transition through that treatment episode. So what would you say if you had to encourage someone, a young person who may want to go into this field or maybe thinking of, oh, I want to do that, or listen to the podcast? What would your advice to them be? Or how could we encourage more people to come into this field? And I know it's so desperately needed.
Well, I think we got to start one by like what we're doing right here is just talking about it. And I was actually thinking about this on the way to work today, and when I was kind of thinking about what to talk about on the podcast, things like that. And, I feel like there's such a stigma around substance use disorders, but also the shame that's built around being an addict or being an alcoholic, especially someone like myself, right? There's obviously certain substances that in society are more acceptable, right? Obviously alcohol, just with it being legal from a lot of people's standpoint, alcohol is not as bad as fentanyl, right? But the fact of the matter is, and I'm a fentanyl guy myself, so I can relate 100% to the shame that kind of goes along with that. But the fact of the matter is, if we don't talk about fentanyl addiction, right, and especially with the current epidemic going on with fentanyl, people aren't going to know that there's help out there for people going through that, right? They'll see someone who's been struggling with alcohol get help and think it's only for alcohol, whatever it is. And so I think having people like us that are, willing to talk about it and put it out there. And I wanted to circle back. You touched on something a second ago, and not only having that compassion, but I was actually just talking to Jeff, our clinical director. I was just talking to him about that next door, because he was like, why are you're always coming over here and like cracking jokes and trying to be in a good mood and stuff. And I think that really goes back to not only making a connection with people, but secondly, as staff here and as staff in this industry and dealing with this kind of patient base, we have to understand where people are starting at when they come through our doors. And a lot of times it's not a place anybody wants to be. But secondly, there's a lot of misery, shame, guilt, a lot of negative emotions that come along with coming in through these doors. And, even somebody sitting at the front desk, a lot of times the person at the front desk is the first person that's happy to see this person in a long time. So having someone who's smiling, like happy to see you, hope you're doing well, that kind of thing, little stuff like that. But even further, throughout treatment, whether it's 30, 60, 90, 6 months, whatever, however many days it is, the onus is kind of on us as staff to be an example of what a good, happy, fulfilling, connected life is without substances and alcohol. So, I walk around here a lot, and even if I'm not having a great day, I try to at least, crack a joke or have a smile on my face or or laugh with some of my coworkers because we don't realize how much some of the clients and patients see. But from speaking from past experience, if I'm doing all this work and my end goal is to be sober, and I look around and I see a bunch of people who are sober but they're miserable, why would I want that? So when I come in and when I meet with families or clients, or even if I'm with a staff member, if a client's walking by in the hallway, we want to obviously not fake it, but authentically show that living this kind of life is a fulfilling, happy, and joyful life that I think often gets overlooked sometimes. And so I think just being an example of what the goal is, right? It's Erica will probably laugh at this, but we're not selling treatment, we're selling a way of life. And if the way of life is not a fulfilling, happy way of life, why would we expect anybody to want that? So I think that's pretty important.
You're absolutely right, Mike. And we got to circle back to that. I don't want to skate past that because it's so true. And I come from that same perspective. We're selling a way of life. And when you come in, there's blow pops at the front desk. There's Alex, there's Raven. We got two people at the front desk who their smiles, these two never stop smiling. Alex is my everything. He's part of the evening staff. He's all staff. He's my everything. And so he's always got something funny to say. And Mike is absolutely correct. He comes to my office, he makes me laugh. But the most important thing is that when clients come in with their families, sometimes you are the first kind word they've heard in a long time. That makes a huge impact. And you're right. We are trying to show individuals that there's a different way of life. Sobriety is difficult enough. If all you've ever known for the last 5, 6, 7 years is living a life filled with substance use, trying to do something different can be scary. It can be difficult. So we are role models. We are showing people that it is possible. I know I like to tell people in my group, the only difference between you and I is you're sitting in the circle and I'm sitting at the front of the circle. That's it, right? I'm here to help guide you through, help, psychoeducation, some skills, but that's literally the only difference. So, Mike, you're absolutely right. Helping people understand that it is okay to laugh. It is okay to be silly. It is okay to have fun, especially when you haven't had any in a long, long time. So I totally agree with you. I think when you come into any facility, there's a time to be serious, but there's also time to allow people to just be themselves. You get different traits and different characteristics that come out in people every day as they learn to become themselves. I like to ask clients, what did you like to do when you were little? Some people love to color and jump rope, and they haven't done those things in a long time. So having the ability to do those things makes a huge difference. It's a huge impact. So I totally agree with you on that one.
Yeah. Well, I was actually, I don't get involved in groups much.
Oh, we can change that.
I've been throwing my name out there, and people keep, I don't know why no one's taking me up on it.
We can change that.
But no, I was actually talking to a group of them the other day. I finally got into a group on Friday, and I forget exactly what we were talking about, but it came up about, processing the shame and, picking up another white chip or starting over again. And now this is just a personal opinion, but I do think historically in this industry and in the sober circles, we've gotten almost too caught up on, the amount of time rather than the quality of time, right? And so somebody early on told me, and I'm not a big cliche guy, so this drives me nuts that I'm even saying this, but, it's you don't count the days, you make the days count. So it's and I was telling them, even now I'm 5 years plus into this, and, I was telling them, I'm one drink away from being at day one again myself. But if that were to happen, knock on wood, but that doesn't make the last 5.5, 6 years a failure, right? And so I think we've got to kind of start to change the perspective on success in treatment and what we're really aiming for as a goal here. If we're talking about long-term 100% abstinence for the rest of our lives, we might be in for a tough battle. But if we're talking about just going day by day and just getting as much as we can out of each day, enjoying each day. Because again, going back to what I was just saying, if we're talking about the next 20 years where, I may slip up 2 or 3 times, but I'm living fulfilling, happy days, I'll take that any day over 20 years of misery, So I think, and you often hear that a lot with like people who say dry drunks and things like that, where, people maybe they're not drinking or using, but they're not really applying anything that they learned. And so they're still pretty miserable. They're stuck in their heads. They're not practicing any type of altruistic principles of helping others, things like that. So I think it's something that's on us, where it's about the quality, not the quantity. And every day, every person that we meet, every time that somebody comes in here, I think we can't really overlook the gravity of the situation that we're in, because that one conversation can be the thing that brings people in or pushes them away. And so having something as simple as a smile on your face, or saying hi in a welcoming way, can make all the difference.
I agree. And we have to begin to lead with kindness, to lead with compassion, to allow a space for laughter, to allow a space for joy. And remember that treatment is outside of walls, right? We do the work here, but it's outside of walls, teaching people and showing people them that they can have fun. That sobriety doesn't have to be boring. You can go to the movies. You can have dinner. You can have a date. You can do these things, that your life does not have to consist of going to treatment and going home. You can have a life. It is going to look different, but you can have a life. And I think that's the key factor. Leading with kindness, leading with compassion, educating, and allowing people to realize that life can be enjoyable, whether it's substance use disorder you're suffering from, or whether it's mental illness. You can have a life that's fulfilling. And I think allowing people to see you with a smile and kindness and compassion, and knowing that you're there to support them, that's the key factor. And that's what we want to do with this podcast. We want to open the floor up to have difficult conversations, to allow society and our community to really get involved and lead with kindness and compassion, because this is something that is not going away. We can no longer ignore these things that are happening in our community, and it's got to start somewhere.
Mm-hmm. And so on that note, aside from people like us and people, obviously I'm not saying we're the only ones by any means, but besides, like we were saying earlier, talking about this, what would you, and I want you to bring in some of your cultural background perspective, like you as a Black woman, what would you like to see in this industry moving forward, making changes? Like what big shift would you like to see?
Well, Mike, that will be a whole nother episode. And I think that's the one I would love to jump into. We did a whole other episode.
I know,
for
as
that
I was
one.
asking, I was like, this is kind of loaded.
That is loaded.
Okay.
Shots fired with that one.
This is kind of a big question. No, I mean.
So he took us over into our next episode, guys. That's a loaded
Perfect.
question. I'm going to have to do some thinking on that one.
Okay.
That's going to require some research.
Okay.
But I do think it's a community. We can no longer do this alone. This can no longer be a Blanchard Institute thing. This can no longer be a facility thing. This can no longer just be the treatment facilities. This has to be something that the community takes on as a whole. And I definitely think that's something that we can discuss in episode 3. And please give us your feedback. Send us your questions if you have anything you'd like to hear from us.
Perfect.
As always, it's been a pleasure. We look forward to chatting with you.
We're so locked in. Yep.